Hello and welcome back here into Caden's Weather Center here. Today is September 4th, 2025. Continuing to pay attention here to the tropics, the Pacific really ramping up with its hurricane season. Continuing on with Hurricane Lorena, or actually Tropical Storm Lorena now, that is continuing off of Baja California. And then we're also paying attention to Hurricane Kiko that could impact the Hawaiian Islands here, maybe later on early next week. We're going to talk about that here as well as touching up on the Atlantic, as now we have Invest 91L, and we're going to go over what the models are saying with that. And is there land impacts possible? Yes, there is, and we'll talk about that here with later on with the models and what we're looking at with the latest information from the National Hurricane Center, as well as paying attention to the severe weather threat that is continuing on in the United States. We have a couple severe thunderstorm warnings right now active as of the recording in this video, so let's kind of talk about what is happening. So right now around the United States, what are we currently looking at? Well, we do know that, very on the west coast here, looking very quiet here around the United States. We do have some rainfall still kind of continuing on over here in the Florida Peninsula that once again, that's going to be moving its way kind of more inland here. We're going to see these kind of really start to ramp up as it heads more into the Florida Peninsula here as those rainfall keeps continuing moving east. Now we do have obviously that low pressure system that we've been continuing to pay attention to, bringing those cooler temperatures on the back end side here. But then we have that rainfall that's on the eastern side of this, and that's bringing some scattered showers and thunderstorms here. We definitely could see some severe thunderstorm warnings continuing on in two different areas. We're seeing some in New York as well as over here in parts of Virginia, North Carolina, and even into the Tennessee region right there. We've been seeing some severe thunderstorm warnings, maybe even, we've seen one tornado warning so far this morning in Tennessee, but obviously we still are going to be paying attention to these storms as they continue to move off to the east and could pose a threat to bring some severe thunderstorms, which could possibly bring the possibility for some small hail and just anything like that. But taking a look at this right now, we do have a marginal risk kind of continuing on over here in the northern part of the United States. That does include parts of southern Minnesota, parts of South Dakota, Iowa, and Nebraska as well. But our main area, obviously, that we've been seeing a lot of activity this morning has been the marginal risk that is on the eastern side, stretching all the way from Tennessee all the way up here into the northern part of New York. We've been seeing a little bit of, scattered showers, thunderstorms as well. Less than 2% of a tornado chance for today, which is some good news there. Wind threat could definitely bring some gusty winds with some of these lines of storms that kind of move off here. And then we do have a slight hail threat, but mostly kind of just hanging out here in kind of the southern, southeastern part of Kentucky, as well as eastern Tennessee, and maybe even parts of western North Carolina, as these storms once again move off to the east there. Now let's take a look here at the future radar. What are we expecting throughout as the rest of the day here? Well, we can clearly see as we head into the next couple of hours, we're going to start seeing some of those scattered showers, thunderstorms still continuing on over here in the northeast, and we're going to see some of that rainfall maybe start to emerge here on the west coast of Florida. Relatively looking quiet here on the west coast here of the United States. There's our tropical storm Lorena right there. Not expected now to move inland, but still could bring some moisture kind of in the Arizona, New Mexico area, which we'll talk about here pretty shortly. But taking a look here going on later on to this evening, this is around 4 p.m. We can see a little bit of that rain kind of dips down here from Minnesota, heads into North Dakota as well. And there's once again that rainfall that's kind of really starting to ramp up parts of west coast of Florida. Now does bring those scattered showers, thunderstorms stretching all the way from northern New York all the way down here into western North Carolina. Some of those storms could be possibly severe at times, and that's why we have that marginal risk. That will eventually, as we head into this evening, we're going to see some of those storms really kind of maybe ramping up slightly as we head into the, to the night hours. New York could definitely be seeing some scattered showers, thunderstorms there. Minnesota looking at some scattered showers and thunderstorms as well, but really our main concern will be in this general region right here, bringing some storms through central part of North Carolina and even into central and eastern part of Virginia there, with maybe some scattered showers and thunderstorms also continuing on right there in the Florida Peninsula. Now we continue to head on to the overnight hours. We see a little bit more of a low pressure system kind of sitting right over here over Wisconsin and going into Michigan as well. Some of that rainfall from Tropical Storm Lorena is going to move its way into Arizona, New Mexico as we head into early tomorrow morning. We're going to start to see that, as well as parts of maybe even western Texas could be really getting some of that as well. But for the East Coast here, we're going to be seeing a lot of clearing up as we head into early tomorrow, which is some good news, but definitely some rain showers will kind of continue to move off to the northeast here, which could impact Maine as we head into tomorrow. So let's hop in right now to the tropics, because that's going to be our main focus of today's video. We're going to be continuing to pay attention to that. Right now, from the National Hurricane Center, we have Tropical Storm Lorena Lorena. Here we have Hurricane Kiko. Hurricane Kiko is expected to continue to move off here to the west-northwest, while Lorena now expected kind of just to hang out right off the coast here of Baja California, which could bring some even more elevated rainfall there to the Baja California, so we'll go over that. But let's talk about hurricane or tropical storm Lorena now. We can see 70-mile-an-hour winds here kind of hanging out northwest at 8 miles an hour, expected to stall out, which could bring some of that heaviest amount of rainfall here to Baja California. We do know that there is convection. Right now the satellite is having a little bit of issues, but we know that there is some convection that has been kind of going off and on throughout today. But tropical storm conditions are expected to really start to kind of arrive here for the Baja California coast pretty soon. So maybe as we head into early tomorrow, maybe even later Friday, and maybe even into early Saturday, we could be seeing some of those tropical storm conditions kind of starting to really start to bring some of those tropical storm force winds. So definitely the tropical conditions will start to head inland pretty soon there. Now, taking a look here at the National Hurricane Center, their new black line right here, that's going to be their forecast line now. Their old forecast line did bringing it inland, but not anymore. Majority of the models kind of keeping it more on the out to sea here, kind of stalling out, obviously, that you kind of can see, because you have 96 hours out as well. The storm is right here. That's 4 days, and it's kind of just hanging out and will be dramatically slowing down there, and that's why we're worried about the possibility of some rainfall threat. Now, regardless of the storm making its way inland here, we're going to see some of that rainfall potential here impacting maybe areas like Phoenix, Yuma, Tucson here in Arizona. And then, as we head into Friday morning, that's going to really impact Arizona. Then we'll make its way here Saturday morning, maybe into parts of the western part here of New Mexico, and maybe even into Texas as well. But our main area that could bring some flash flooding will be the Arizona region in that general area right there. Now, let's take a look at Hurricane Kiko, our main focus for today, because we do see that parts of Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands, are now in the cone here, the forecast cone for the track of Hurricane Kiko. As we do see a Category 4 right now is expected to continue that major hurricane strength until about maybe later on Sunday evening, where it will start to weaken as it goes, into more of a hurricane strength there, maybe a Category 2, Category 1 by Monday, as it starts to head into those cooler waters. Now, expecting still a tropical storm here for the Hawaiian Islands, so maybe coming in the next 2 days, we could be starting to see some tropical storm watches being issued here for the Hawaiian Islands, so something to pay attention to with that. Now, we obviously know that the model's very consistent and know exactly where the storm is going to be heading, so definitely if you live in Hawaii, make sure that you're paying attention to the National Hurricane Center from this storm right here. But we can clearly see that the storm is not moving very quickly either. This storm is moving very slow, and you can see in 5 days, it's just going to be off the coast here of the Hawaiian Islands, so by tomorrow, we'll have a little bit more of a general idea if the storm's going to go more to the north of the islands, or if some of these southern models are going to be more correct where it heads more inland and goes over the big island there, or even any of the islands. We could be paying attention to that. But regardless of that, we're going to see some heavy rainfall. Now, the biggest thing is 120 hours is just off the coast here of the big island, really. So we're going to be seeing possibly a pretty kind of middle Category 1 hurricane there, maybe a high-end tropical storm. Really, anywhere in between this strength right here could be something that we see kind of heading more inland here, or bringing more impacts here for the Hawaiian Islands. Now, obviously, we don't know about a direct landfall for the Hawaiian Islands, but something to continue to pay attention to. When could you see your tropical storm force winds? Well, we could see it possibly as we head into early, Monday morning. So early next week, we could be seeing some of those tropical storm conditions there. And if we take a look here at the wind probabilities, we're obviously starting to see those wind, probabilities really starting to kind of ramp up. For right now, we're at about a 20, 30, 40% chance here. For the big island here in the northern islands as well. But we kind of can definitely see that all depending on where the storm goes and how big it is, that could really impact on who gets the worst of the conditions there. So definitely just keep an eye on it right now. That is for sure. We definitely want to keep an eye on that. Taking a look here back at the Eastern Pacific, we can see there's Tropical Storm Lorena. We can clearly see has weakened, not expected to kind of head more inland now, kind of just expected to hang out here, and you kind of can see that with the GFS expected to stall, and then it will be, into more unfavorable environment. Now, all of the favorable environment that's kind of continuing on here in the Eastern Pacific will eventually make its way to the Atlantic. And that's why we're kind of expecting the Atlantic hurricane season to kind of start popping off here pretty soon. Now, the GFS does pick up on another possible tropical system right over here in the Eastern Pacific. That could be something to kind of pay attention to as we head into maybe the next couple of days. Could we see something kind of form from that? That is a good question. But our biggest concern, obviously, right now is still going to be Lorena and how much rainfall it could possibly bring into the Baja California region. Now, the European model still once again expecting for this storm to stall out, maybe a little bit more of a northeastern turn, could bring more heavy rainfall here into western parts of Mexico as well as Baja California, which could bring the possibility for some mudslides. And then, once again, the European model does kind of pick up on that next tropical system here in the eastern Pacific. National Hurricane Center doesn't have anything marked, but I can tell that 1011 millibars is really just nothing, so that's something to pay attention to. And then the Euro model is saying very, very quiet there for the rest of it, so something to pay attention to. Now, taking a look at Hurricane Kiko's side here for the Hawaiian Islands, GFS model, we can clearly see maybe a little bit off on the strength here, but that's going to continue its westward motion, kind of maybe west-northwest here, as it will eventually make its way just north of the Hawaiian Islands. Now, once again, the GFS model used to go south of the islands here. Now we've seen a little bit more of a north. It's kind of finding a little bit of a weaker in that high pressure there. So now it kind of goes more off to the north of the islands, which could possibly bring some heavy rainfall down from the southern part of the storm here. That will go to the north of the islands, maybe as a tropical storm. So definitely is expected to weaken pretty quickly as it starts to approach the islands. It's very rare for tropical systems to hit Hawaii just because of how unfavorable, how cooler the waters are. Then you definitely know that tropical systems do not like those cooler waters. So that's definitely something to kind of pay attention to. But GFS does bring it to the north, as well as the European model does bringing it even more to the north, more than the GFS. So if the European is right, less impacts will happen. If the GFS is right, more impacts could possibly happen for the Hawaiian Islands there. But no tropical, anything is out right now. No tropical warnings, no tropical watches or anything like that. So let's take a look at the Atlantic side right now here. The National Hurricane Center just updated this right here. Kind of had to wait a little bit, but the National Hurricane Center has now updated Invest 91L here. A broad area of low pressure has formed along the tropical wave here over the eastern Atlantic, the tropical Atlantic here. It does look like it is getting more organized here as it continues to make that westward approach here. As it moves slowly westward, about 5 to 10 miles an hour. The storm is not moving very quickly here, but we have a 60% chance here of formation here in the next 48 hours, 90% chance here in the next 7 days. Now we do see the Leeward Islands is in that 7-day area here for the possible impacts. So now the National Hurricane Center could be expecting the system still to kind of go maybe more into the Caribbean than kind of what we're seeing here with the European and the GFS model, which we'll go into a little bit farther out in this video. But there's still that chance of it going to the north of the islands here, which could bring no impacts. But right now, if you live in the Leeward Islands and maybe even Puerto Rico, definitely keep an eye on this storm. So regardless of development, heavy rainfall will be expected here for the islands, and that is something we want to continue to pay attention to. Now, we don't have any spaghetti models out yet for Invest 91L. That will be out later this evening, and I'll post that on my X page down in the description. So make sure to go follow that. But let's jump into the GFS model. What are we looking at? So the GFS model, this is the brand new 12Z, 1,002 millibars here as we head into September 8th. So very slow moving storm, very, very slow here. That's in the next 96 hours. So the next 3 days, we could be seeing the storm barely moving. And even as we head into September 11th here, past the peak of the hurricane season, hurricane possibly right off the Leeward Islands. Now the GFS, I will say, yesterday was pretty consistent on the storm going up to the north and then eventually getting pulled out to sea. Now we're seeing a little bit more of a different kind of scenario as it heads more into the Caribbean, kind of gets pulled to the north and then gets pulled to the west here, and that's due to that high pressure kind of building back in, and you kind of can see that with the new model run. Now I do want to bring up something though. With the GFS, we could definitely see a possible tropical system coming in from the Western Caribbean, which could possibly impact here the Florida Peninsula, and that could bring it into the Florida Bend and the Florida Panhandle. That could bring some heavy rainfall right there. So let's actually zoom in here to the Western Atlantic. We've been paying attention to that as the GFS has been hinting at a possible tropical system kind of coming up over here from a tropical wave and could possibly get pulled to the north. That would obviously bring some heavy rainfall here to the Florida Peninsula. Now, this obviously would not be a very good case scenario because we do have, if we have a tropical system here that's right over Cuba, and then we have this hurricane that's also right here, we're going to be seeing a little bit of kind of, a big kind of problem here with the rainfall threat. So you kind of see with the GFS model bringing that storm into the Gulf and then also bringing it into the Florida Panhandle. The GFS, the 12Z, does kind of bring the system right over here into the west coast of Florida, just like what I drew out there. Brings it into the west coast of Florida, kind of does like a little Irma track, but then kind of more of an Ian track. So definitely could be something that could bring a lot of heavy rainfall if there's two tropical systems back to back here for the Florida Peninsula. Now, obviously, we are still very far out. Look at how far out we are, even from the storm, even approaching the Florida Peninsula, 318 hours out. Now, for the other tropical system, about 228 hours out, so a little bit closer, but nothing has been marked for the National Hurricane Center on that tropical system. But you can definitely see very big difference here, especially from the 6Z, where the 6Z brought it to the east coast here of Florida as a major hurricane there. The 00Z very far out to sea, but then you bring it to the 12Z, bringing it down to the Keys to possibly impact that. But once again, if you live in Florida and you are seeing this, it is too far out to be exactly sure. Now, taking a look here at the European model, what are we looking at with the European model? The European model for the 6Z, not bringing too much of tropical activity here in the Caribbean, but maybe a little bit of tropical activity, obviously, still with this storm. 994 bringing it into the Caribbean, and kind of had the same track here earlier this morning here as what the GFS has been saying here. Now, if we take a look at the 00Z, does seem like that the European did pick up on a tropical system right there. Eventually goes down from a front, but then you have the hurricane over here, and that's something we could pay attention to as it kind of follows the same approach there. Goes through the Leeward Islands, goes just east of Puerto Rico, makes its way off to the west, and then starts to eventually get pulled to the north. So once again, we could be seeing a lot of turns here, and that's something that we saw obviously with the GFS earlier, but our biggest thing is we're going to be waiting for that European 12Z model to see if it kind of matches with the GFS or if it's going to kind of hang out more on the East Coast there. So something to pay attention to very closely for that. As you can see, the ensembles, we're still paying attention, waiting for the 12Z models, the ensembles to come out here at the recording of this video. But taking a look here at the 00Z, we're going to see that with the Southwest Atlantic, we could definitely see that the Leeward Islands and maybe even Puerto Rico does have the possibility here of getting impacted. But then you take a look here at the Gulf of, the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico there. You can definitely see that there is some models that do bring a possible tropical system up from the Western Caribbean into the Florida Peninsula here, but still, once again, keeping most of those models out to sea. But we'll have to definitely see once again when it comes out to the 12Z models there. Now, taking a look at the GFS ensembles, once again, where this is the brand new 12Z, so we're not having it too far out. Once again, still a possible tropical system off the East Coast, but our main concern will be this tropical wave or our low pressure system that does head into the Caribbean. But now you can see most ensembles now bringing it into the Leeward Islands as a possible tropical storm, so that could bring a little bit more of a westward kind of trend here that we've been seeing over the last couple of days. So we've been paying attention to that very, very closely there. So obviously, if you are, continuing to pay attention to the tropics, make sure you're following the National Hurricane Center and you're, paying attention to your local National Weather Service, as well as we are still heading into the peak of hurricane season there. But make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy this weather update. Make sure to follow my X page down in the description down below for the latest information here on the tropics, severe weather, any weather that is going on around the country. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. Stay safe out there, and bye-bye.